For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and welcome to episode 8 of the Brian Cole story. Brian, welcome back.
Hey, good morning.
Oy. So I watched our family watched your last, episode, and I think Mom even had commented on Facebook when we published your last one and said, boy, these are getting a little harder to watch. But, before we start, so first of all, we do these every Sunday. We publish these on our YouTube channel, on our website at drywire.com, and also on Facebook, typically on Sundays, where that's when it goes out on Sunday. So if anyone wants to watch the recap, just go to those pages. You can see the first 7 episodes. But before we start, because I know we left off with, you shot a dude, you're going back to prison. But I was thinking about that this morning. How much time have you been, incarcerated up until this point? And I don't know, do you refer to like Lincoln Hills as incarceration? I don't know if that falls under the umbrella. Do you consider it incarceration?
I do because you're locked up.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I just don't know
you
what
lost your freedom.
Yeah, what the definition there is. So what age were you when you first went? When you were first incarcerated?
Yeah, so 14 years old. That's when I first got sent to probably I'm trying to think here, foster home. So between the foster home and all the other places I was locked up, I was pretty much locked up almost the whole time from the ages of 14 to 18. So about 4 years as a juvenile.
Okay.
And then 18 from, I think it was 1984 or 83, 84 when I got arrested there for the first adult incarceration. And I did a little over 9 years on that bit. And then...
Yeah. But you were out... Not out.
I was out for a while.
Was it like, it was less than a year, wasn't it?
It was less than a year, yeah.
Less than a year. So we'll just, rounding around, we'll just say it, okay, got it. So then that was 9.5 years incarcerated again. Then you get back out. And that's, of course, I think our last show, and maybe a little bit the one before that, was when you were out. And how long was that? In my mind, I'm remembering like around 2 years.
Yeah, it was between I think that towards the end of 1993, and then this shooting happened in 1996. And in between those two points, between 93 and 96, I did 2 other, I was incarcerated twice in between there for a few months each time for cutting the bracelet off and taking off and all that. So I'm not sure how much time I did there, but it was at least 6 to 8 months for each of those 2.
All right, well, that's almost 16 years. I'd have to go back and double check the math. But so you are now going to prison for the second time, and how old are you?
Let's see. You're making me do math. 1996. So I was born in 65. So you can figure that out. 65,
75, 85, 90, so 31.
So 31, okay.
So 31, and then 14, you were, and I'll figure, okay. Yeah, that would actually make it almost 17 years in prison. So since 14 up until 31, 14 of your, since age 14, and to now going into prison again, my math tells me that you've really only had about total, a little over 3 years when you weren't incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was just trying to wrap my head around that.
That was,
and I don't think I still am wrapping my head around that. That's so bizarre that you've literally only had like 3.5 years since the age of 14 where you were a quote unquote free man.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things I used to say all the time. I spent most of my life in prison, and it wasn't until, I don't know, was it 3-4 years ago maybe, where I couldn't say that anymore. I actually finally started having more time on in real life than I did incarcerated. So,
well, speaking of, that's where we left off, heading back to prison.
So you get
there and everyone's like, "Hey, Brian."
Yeah, hey, it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, no kidding. So let's pick up right there.
Yeah, I got to do a little recap real quick. Sure. A couple things I forgot to talk about before that's part of this story. So when I was released on that last bit in 93 or whatever, there was one point in there when I came back from Milwaukee. I was living with my brother for a while. Well, I met this girl, again, just for sex. She had a house. I didn't have any money, so I moved in with her, and we did things while I was there. And at some point down the road, after, I was only there for a few months or whatever, I didn't I didn't like her, and just the sex. And found out she was pregnant. She said it was me, and I've always been told by the doctors, because when I was married to Sherry, my first wife, before my first incarceration, I was told we couldn't have kids, and I was told that I was sterile. It was probably from the drugs. So I'm like, no, the kid ain't mine. You're a blah blah blah, and they made me do a DNA test, and come to find out that it was my kid.
What?
So there, yeah. So
How
there
did we
was
gloss over that?
well, there's so much that goes on, dude, in my life. I can't keep track of it all. And then, remember at one point I said during that free time I met that older woman, Nancy, and we were on and off and on and off and on and off all the time. So she was still, even though that I was with this girl that got in the three-way love triangle and all that, she still liked me or loved me or whatever. Nancy did, and she stuck by me. So now, with that being said, yeah, I'm going back into prison. I got 18 years in prison on top of 12 years probation, 12-year state sentence. And
wait. I'm sorry. Hold on. The child.
Mm-hmm.
So this is before you went in, right?
Yep,
So in this little bit of time, you found out that you were a dad, or going to be a dad.
Yeah. Well, I didn't accept that. I didn't want to accept that. So yeah, I denied it, and I remember there was this guy Chris that was living with me, who was my deacon in the temple, and I remember even going when I went down to get that DNA test. I had him come with me, and we were putting on a show, and we walked in. I put my arm around him. I'm like, yeah, I know it ain't me, because I don't play with women. I do guys. This is my boyfriend.
Good Lord.
Just goofing around.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I didn't want to admit that was my kid, but the DNA test came up saying it was. So my daughter, whose name is Tina, will come into the story during this bit.
Well, okay.
But up until then, she wasn't even part of none of that was part of in my mind. It was
well, sure. I mean, seriously, for you, you're going back to prison, and considering where you were in life, who cares? I know it sounds horrible, but I'm assuming that's just kind of where you were. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay, back to prison.
All right. So yeah, the 18 years, 12 years. So I ended up doing 10 years on that. Again, going right back into the occult study and making disciples of the occult in prison. So at one point, now the lady who I was involved with in this love triangle, she started writing me. And I was writing back to her. And even though all this stuff went down, she tried to shoot me and everything else. We're writing each other these love letters. And in the meantime, I'm still writing Nancy, and Nancy is writing me. And I don't remember if it was her or just like, what am I doing? But I finally cut off connection with her and said that I wanted to do with her anymore. I guess I think what my mindset was is I wanted to get more evidence from her to be able to maybe go to court and appeal this, because the cops kind of had told me that they had done this kind of thing before. Yeah. But again, I'm the only one that really didn't tolerate what they were doing. So I guess I was trying to get more evidence. And when I saw that wasn't going to happen, I cut it off. But in the meantime, Nancy's still writing me, and she stuck by me that whole 10 years.
Well, why do you think? Was it, and this sounds horrible of me to say, but is it like no other options? Because seriously, or is it like, man, Brian is like awesome? Like, what is it?
I don't know. I know she was married. She divorced shortly before she met me. And she was in that whole mindset of, all guys suck. Yeah. But one thing, I was a very good manipulative person, and I really did like the person that I was with. And I guess I just wasn't an abusive person to my ladies. And maybe that was something weird to her and attractive to her. I don't know. But she stuck through that whole bit. And matter of fact, as you'll see, when I get out, I move in with her again. So anyway. Yeah, back to the occult stuff, studying a hardcore, making disciples. They had changed the rules in those Wiccan pagan religious groups to where the inmates can't lead them. So now you had to have people from, Wiccan circles out here on the streets, or priestesses or whatever, come in and run the groups. So I could no longer run the groups, but I kind of did, right. Whichever prison I was in. Now, this was a time, 1998-ish or so, where the Wisconsin Department of Corrections started contracting out to other private prisons in other states, and they started shipping inmates out, like massively shipping inmates out to places in Texas and Minnesota and Oklahoma and all these other places, contracting with these private industries. 1998, I ended up getting shipped to Oklahoma. So I did 4 years in Oklahoma, and it was, at first it stunk because, man, you're thousands of miles away from anybody being able to visit. And Nancy would come up and visit me once in a while, and my mom, I think, came up one time. So yeah, it kind of stunk, but after a while it was cool because it went from, doing time up here in Wisconsin where DOC ran things to going down there where the inmates ran things. And even though it stunk in a way because, man, because it was run by the inmates, there was riots left and right. There was 3 major riots while I was down there. Most of that was over the food because they had a private contract with, what's that place that does the food and Aramark. Had a contract with Aramark, and it was like almost every meal, it was minimal food, and we were getting the same thing: rice, beans, and cornbread. And oatmeal in the morning. And so there were 2 of the 3 major riots was over the food. And it was bizarre. In Waupun and Green Bay, I've been gassed before, not personally, but, inmates that were either next to me or above me or below me, they go in there and, suit up and go in and gas everybody, and the gas would go everywhere. So everybody would get gassed. But in this place, they had these like pods, and they were 2 tiers high. There were a pod on each side. There was a middle section. And in the pod, it was 2 tiers high. It was a big open area with tables and stuff down below. And they had these shafts in the ceiling. So what they do is first they'd warn everybody, sell up, sell up. Everybody get in your cells. Riots are going, well, who's going to go in their cell? And there's a riot going on. Everybody's out tearing stuff up. And so then they'd start dropping gas things down the tubes into the cell hall. And for those who didn't make it in by the time those were dropped and expanded out into the atmosphere, that's when they would bust through the doors and they'd throw or shoot in these percussion grenade things, or they'd shoot out these rubber BBs or these rubber pellets. Ooh, them things hurt. And so I was involved in at least 3 riots while I was there. It was pretty cool. It was exciting. It was always exciting there. Then there was an incident where I was sitting in my room, and they had these windows that were probably, 8 inches wide and tall in your rooms. And I was just happened to be gazing out in our room. We could look out at the other building where the kitchen was. One day I'm looking out the window, and I see these 2 guys running out. One's in a kitchen outfit, the white with the hairnet.
Right.
And he's got a huge old knife in his hand, a butcher knife, running after this other dude. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on there? This is the excitement down there, and this is the kind of thing that happened. And all the time, it was never a dull moment there. But
why? Can you speak to that a little bit? So this is a privately owned.
Yeah,
business.
What was it? CDC, CRC, something like that.
So why is that? Sounds like kind of a little more of a free-for-all. Mm-hmm. Why? Did you ever figure out why? Did they just not? Didn't have enough employees, or because they didn't want to spend money? Why? Yeah. Why is it so different?
Well, number one, not enough employees. Number 2, the employees aren't state employees; they're just private citizens. And do you think they're going to put their lives at stake for this? No. As a matter of fact, you want to talk about a drug problem? It wasn't a drug problem; it was a drug solution. These guys were bringing in. That was. You only make so much money doing what they're doing there. So when they figure out they can bring drugs in and make tons and tons of money, what are they going to do? Get a slap on the hand? They're not state employees. So they were bringing in tons of marijuana and crack and everything else up in there. The drugs were just everywhere in the prison. That and just the pay had to be crappy. And, the guards were just being interchanged all the time because they quit because they weren't making enough money, and all the drama that was going on, all the riots and everything else. They don't want no part of that. And so, yeah, it was just, it was good and bad for the inmates. Like I said, it was an inmate run joint, and we could pretty much almost get away with anything down there. And they just didn't have the security and cameras and stuff like that than a regular prison.
Now, out of curiosity, would you prefer that over state run? prisons?
In my old life, yeah. In my life now, no, no.
Interesting. So you were there for 4 years.
Yeah, about
Things
4 years.
are going. When we say like things are going great or things are going well, I mean,
Yeah,
considering your life at that time where you were spiritually, mentally, emotionally, things are going. Can we say well?
going really great. I mean, I was in La La Land down there, being able to do what you want, and the drugs that were available, the Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, you didn't have rules like you couldn't go in other people's rooms, like around Wisconsin. You can go into people's rooms. You just had to ask, hey, I'm going up to Bob's room, and you hang out. You just got to have the door open. So, drugs going on. The Dungeons and Dragons, there was no rules there, so we, a bunch of us guys had the books, and we had games going all the time. We were really into it. The occult stuff was great. I mean, they were so free. Wisconsin was getting to the point where you could have things, but very limited in your room. All the other stuff had to be at the group at the chapel. So by the time it was said and done, I ended up having a whole temple in my room. They let me have my altar and candles and incense and everything else. So I had my room was a temple basically.
Bizarre.
So, doing rituals in there with other guys and all that. There was one point where there was this dude. I don't know. He was kind of a square, back then, kind of a cowboy dude. I don't remember his name, Dave or something like that. But anyway, he was one of the three guys that we'd always go into his room every Sunday afternoon and watch NASCAR together. We were all NASCAR lovers.
I'm sorry. This is prison.
Yeah.
I clearly don't know anything about prison. That's so weird. Like, ever just doing drugs and playing games and watching NASCAR. It's like, what is going on?
Doing satanic rituals and everything else. Yeah. So we were in his room, all three of us sitting on the bottom bunk, just kicking back, watching the race, and all of a sudden, dude gets up and coughs, and blood spews out, and he just plops right down to the ground and cracks his head.
Ooh.
And we're like, "What the heck, man?" We get up and get down there, and he's got blood coming out of his mouth, and there's no movement. We check his heart, and there's no breathing. So the other dude goes out in tears, like, "Hey, get up here! Someone's dying!" So this dude ended up dying, man. They came up, they had everybody locked down, and after they did what they did and had the medical people come in and take him out and all that, we found out he was dead. And so everybody else but us, other two guys who were in the room, got out. We were under investigation because, obviously
sure.
thought we killed the guy or something.
Right.
And come to find out, the guy, I don't know, they have a name for it, some massive heart attack where the heart just explodes and you're dead. So that happened to him. That was interesting. So I bring that up, and just, things like this in prison, when I was in before, people jumping off, 4-story tiers and killing themselves, and the guards killing somebody with AIDS inside of a cart, a laundry cart. They covered them up with, this was in Waupun back in the late 80s, early 90s, and they ended up beating this guy so bad they killed him. And just this is normal, a normal part of life, man. And seeing people come out of the kitchen with knives trying to kill somebody else, that's just life.
And at any point in here, are you fearful, or do you still have the nobody messes with me?
Yeah. Especially in Oklahoma, because like I say, in Wisconsin, there was gangbanging going on, but the guards didn't allow that. I mean, if they found out you were gangbanging and you were in with somebody else, they'd ship you to another institution to separate you and all that. They didn't tolerate. But down there, it was wide open. Gang signs being thrown and everything else. And so the guys who are basically running the gangs down there, the Disciples and the Crips and all that, I knew the leaders personally. And as a matter of fact, one of them used to come to me for rituals, to be able to do destruction rituals for people or whatever. They all respected me. I respected them. They left me alone, and they protected me basically too. They made sure nobody messed with it. Hey, if somebody messes with you, you come to us. So I had a name. I had a name. Wasn't my first time around the merry-go-round there. So yeah, I'm also got big into the animal activist thing again, and telling people that I had released all those makes. So tons of money coming in from these activists. This was also the time up to that point. I was on a lot of medications, man. It started back when I was in the psychiatric ward. They started me out on Melorel. And so by this time in my life, I'm on like 5 different kinds of pills. I got Melorel, Elavil. I was taking 400 milligrams of Elavil just to put me to sleep at night. So just tons of medications. But it got to the point I was trying to, for years I had been trying to do drawings and all this other stuff. But it got to the point where I was so shaky and my cotton mouth was so bad all the time. It was just messing with me. And I made the decision, I got to get off these meds, man. It's not good. So it was
The
at that
drug's
point.
okay.
Yeah.
But boy, medication.
Yeah. Plus, there was plenty of drugs in the prison there in Oklahoma. So that was the point when I started weaning myself off and eventually got myself completely off medications. And I started working out when I was down there. That was probably the last 6.5 years. That was my thing. I pumped iron 6 days a week. By the time I got out of prison, I think it was 185 pounds. I had almost 14-inch arms, and I was a big dude.
Wait, so you said 6.5 years at that point, but you were only in Oklahoma for 4, but that's where you started.
That's where I started.
Got it.
Yeah. And then, the tattoos too. I mean, tattoo shops, you want to go to a tattoo shop, hey, sell 22 and sell 53. Ricky does them and Bobby does them. So I got some tattoos done there by a guy named Ricky who, interestingly enough, we are still in touch. He's out now too. He's been out for a while. As a matter of fact, he lives out in Green Bay. Him and his crew of motorcycle guys, they come up here annually every biker Sunday that we have our biker show and stay the weekend, and we hang out. And this last biker Sunday, the bike show 2 weekends ago, he finally showed me a picture of him proposing to his girlfriend after 4 or 5 years, and asked me to do the marriage. So here we are all here together now on the good side of things. But me and Ricky did a lot of time together. So I had tattoos on.
I know, obviously.
This one.
Yeah, so obviously, Ricky, that's probably a whole other story there. But just out of curiosity, so he comes up to, so you say the Biker Sunday, that's at the church, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So is he just out? And is it healthy that you still talk to him, or is it now the dude is saved now or something? Just real quick, what's his story?
Well, we were both into the D&D big time together. Yeah. We both ran games and did games together, and we did probably out of the 27 or 24 years I was locked up as an adult, I probably did half of those with Ricky in various institutions, including the 4 years down there in Oklahoma. So we were both bad guys, and he's just a rowdy character and goofy, but no, yeah, I think he's saved. Not for sure. We haven't really had time to sit down and talk about it, but he comes here and he's starting to finally do things right and get married and not live with this girl. And it's a great relationship, man. We're healthy and we've not been alone. I mean, I've not hung along with him alone. He's been here at the church.
Sure.
But next year when I marry them, I'll actually be able to get down there and hang out with them and maybe chill with them for a couple days.
What a neat story.
Yeah, for sure. So finally that's over with. They ship us back. I get sent to Red Granite Correctional Institution, and that was interesting. Remember the guy who brought 2 other guys and tried to take me out in the house? So there he is. One day I'm sitting in there, and here comes Tommy. Tommy Allen is his name. And I had found out by then that a few years before that, he became a Christian, I heard. And so when Tommy came in, I didn't even recognize him because he had lost tons of weight and he was just looked different. I'm like, man, is that Tommy? Is that Tom? So I had someone say, hey, go ask that dude what his name is, And he came back and said, Tom. I'm like, oh, that is him. So we had Rec coming up. I went up, knocked on his room, and I said, hey, we need to go outside and have a talk. So he came out, we went to Rec and we started walking around track, and I said, listen, man, what you did was inappropriate. And I don't care whether or not you got locked up because of me, because you didn't have the whatever to come and deal with that with me face to face, so now you're doing time. That's your consequence. But there's another consequence, what you did to me. And here you are now. So you got one of 2 choices. We can either take care of this right now like men, or we can forget it ever happened and go on about our business. And he chose let's forget about it because I guess he was a Christian. Maybe he forgave me. I don't know.
Right.
But there he was. And that was about all we had to say to each other the whole time. Never said nothing to him more. But Tommy will come up later in the story down the road. Let's see. I also, so there was that ultimatum. And during this time, I was in Red Grand, and I started getting letters from my brother. Now my brother was out doing naughty stuff too, and he and some other guy, man, I don't know what their deal was. I don't know if they were on drugs or what, but they stole the car and they went on this four-state thing, and they were stealing siren lights off cop cars and stuff from the military. They had a landmine or something like that from the military, and just stealing stuff. And they got caught. And he ended up getting a ton of time down in a prison in Missouri. Well, I don't know how long he had been locked up to that point, but he started writing me all of a sudden, and it's all this God stuff and trying to preach to me. And I'm like,
What?
yeah. So after about 3 or 4 letters, I remember telling him, you know what, man, don't even write me anymore, because this ain't you. I'll see the real you when you get out, but don't come to me with this junk. You know what I'm saying? So I quit writing to my brother, and he quit writing to me at that time. But that was some bizarre stuff. So here I am, doing time. I'm continuing to work out 6 days a week. I'm making disciples in the occult, playing Dungeons and Dragons. And toward the end of the sentence, I went to Stanley Correctional Institution for the second time. And this is where Nancy and I were still writing. This is the time, I think my daughter was probably 14 or so. No contact with her. Don't even know what she looks like. And she was, I guess, friends with Nancy. And Nancy's like, can you get her on your visiting list and I'll bring her up to see you? And I'm like, what? All right. So I got, I put in the paperwork file that did all this and that, and it finally got approved a few months later, and Nancy brought her up. So that was my first time seeing Tina, my daughter. Don't really remember how the visit went. Must have went okay. I actually got a picture taken there with her. So that was the first time I met my daughter, when I think she was about 14. So yeah, here I am. So fast forward towards the end of the bit, I did about 10 years on that, and find out that I'm finally going to be released. And I think I was in Stanley Correctional Institution when I was released. So that's where we'll end on that.
And that puts you at what, 41? If I'm doing my math right?
Probably, yeah.
About 40?
Let's see, that was 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 41.
41. So you got to meet your daughter. You went to multiple different prisons, including Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to your brother. What's your brother's name?
Jeff.
So I remember when you first started, you and with us, with Dryden Wire, were doing your Sunday messages, I think. This was, man, I don't remember when we started that. That was got to be like 4 years ago. And you've done shows like with my mom, Diane Dryden. You've been on like your Diane's Kitchen and chats, etc. And I would hear that, something that you actually just said about your brother. I heard the same thing about you, which was basically, oh, I'm a Christian now, whatever. No. Mm-hmm. Brian's a manipulator. It's all fake, and you'll get burned someday.
Yep.
Obviously, you have heard that before, too.
Yep.
So your brother is that way. There's something, if it's friends, okay, I get it, but it's your brother. There's a connection. There always is a connection. But it was so easy for you just to get out of here.
Yep.
And was it just because you didn't believe that he was a Christian?
Yeah.
Or I just didn't want anything to do with Christianity or God?
Yeah, both. Yeah, if you remember talking about the relationship with my brother when we were young, and I couldn't stand him and tried to kill him a couple times. And
well, there's that.
Then fast forward to 18, and just before my first incarceration, he's bringing girlfriends over to my house so he can have sex with them and come to our parties and stuff. And at one point, my dad was trying to keep him away from me because I was a bad influence, not knowing Jeff was involved in all this stuff too. And but yeah, I didn't want to hear about it for sure. And I knew my brother, and I knew that wasn't my brother. That's why I said I'll see the real you when I get out, and I did. So yeah, it was. I wasn't trying to hear it, and yeah, whether he was, come on, I stole the gun from my own mom to shoot somebody with, and there'll be more like that down the line with my wife and everything else. Yeah. I didn't care who you were.
So just to clarify, so that was all fake? He wasn't a Christian?
We'll talk about that when it comes to
right.
that.
I just don't want to gloss over that. But if he's coming up later on, we could talk about that later. But that's interesting.
Yep.
So your brother.
So if there was time before the takeaway on all this, I don't have my phone again. I'm trying to keep it off. I don't know where we're at. I was just
exactly 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Otherwise, I was going to have you just if you wanted to ask questions about, prison or whatever.
Well,
But
I'm trying to ask those kind of along the way instead of kind of just waiting to the end. And I think most of the things I've written down, I think we've already addressed. I did have just a question. Was there a hole in Oklahoma? Like
oh yeah.
you do something
Yep.
bad. Did you ever get sent there?
Nope.
So
No,
this stretch, if I'm using the correct lingo, of 10 years in prison, were at any point you in the hole?
I don't, obviously I was for probably a couple of 2 or 3 day adjustment segregation times for doing something, but I pretty much stayed out of the hole most of the time this time. I didn't get caught for doing anything
Well,
big this time. I mean, they had me in the hole a couple of times. They come and search my room and take all my occult stuff after it was given to me. And I think there was one time I did a couple days in the hole because they found a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons stuff in my room. But mostly it was occult stuff. They take it all, throw me in the hole for a couple of days, come out, investigate it, give it all back, and they just do that over and over and over and just mess with me.
so before, obviously, our next episode, we'll be talking about then what do you do there? It sounds like moving in with Nancy. Is that what I heard you say earlier? Or
Yeah.
getting back together with her? So at this point, you're 41 and 20, however many years that is now, 37 years pretty much incarcerated. Maybe I'm doing that wrong. No, that's since age, no, sorry. Since 14, 17, 17. So 27 years incarcerated. Is this just fine? Like, I'm going to get back out, but I'll probably be back in. Or is this, man, that's it? Like, I don't need to find God or anything, but I got to make sure I don't come back to this place. Does that ever cross your mind? Because I'm trying to understand, like, the mindset of someone who has spent the overwhelming majority of his teenage and adult life incarcerated. Is it just like a way of life at this point? You don't even think about it?
It kind of is. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about that probably the next time we're together, where my mindset was at when, I mean, yeah.
Bizarre.
The no, I did not have any inclination. I mean, yeah, obviously we all think we're not going back in again. We're going to be smarter criminals. But that was going to be my takeaway was about addiction and the power of addiction. So all these years I've had in, especially those two big bits, almost 10 years and 10 years, every single day for each of those 10-year bits, all I could think about was I can't wait to get out and hit the pipe and have sex, but hit the pipe. That is the power of addiction, where even for that long a time, that's all that's on, especially when you get some dope in the joint or something. You're sitting in your smoking your pin joint and like, man, I can't wait to get out and hit the doobie, a big fat one. And
Really?
that's all that's on your mind when you're an addict. Cigarettes, even the cigarettes, the dope, the sex, all that stuff you are addicted to. That's all that's on your mind. That's your whole purpose of being released is, to be free, but to be free to get out there and do those things again. I'm just going to be smarter about it this time.
I got a funny feeling you weren't smarter about it this next time.
Not at all. Got stupider.
Just guessing. All right, man. Well, we'll leave it there. We'll pick back up next week.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Love you, man.
I love you too. Bye-bye.